Protests erupted on Maputo's streets on Monday as Mozambique's top court confirmed the ruling party's victory in a disputed October election. "We are tired of being enemies, of being the bad ones," said this protester, adding, "The people are being beaten down." In its final tally, the Constitutional Council said Frelimo's Daniel Chapo had secured about 65% of the vote, lower than the figure of more than 70% given by the Electoral Commission in late October. It also gave Frelimo fewer seats in the parliament than the commission did, without explaining why it had made those changes. The Constitutional Council has the final say over the electoral process. Western observers said the election was not free and fair. The post-election period has seen the biggest protests against Frelimo in Mozambique's history, where the party has governed since 1975. At least 130 people were killed in clashes with police, according to civil society monitoring group Platform Decide. Chapo on Monday expressed his sympathy to those who lost their lives during the demonstrations. He added that Mozambique's electoral system needs reforms that will, quote, respond to the aspirations of our society and not just to party interests. Frelimo has consistently been accused by opponents and election observers of rigging votes since it first allowed elections in 1994, although it has repeatedly denied those accusations.
בימים האלה, בהם ארגון הטרור החותי יורה על מדינת ישראל.
When the Houthi terrorist organization is firing missiles at Israel, I want to convey a clear message to them at the beginning of my remarks. We have defeated Hamas. We have won over Hezbollah. We have blinded Iran's defense systems and damaged the production systems. We have toppled the Assad regime in Syria. We have dealt a severe blow to the axis of evil. And we will also deal a severe blow to the Houthi terrorist organization in Yemen, which remains the last to stand and fire at Israel. We will damage its strategic infrastructure, and we will behead its leaders, just as we did Haniyeh, Sinwar, and Nasrallah in Tehran, Gaza, and Lebanon. We will do it in Hodeidah and Sana'a. Whoever will raise his hand to Israel, his hand will be severed. The IDF's long arm will harm him and will settle the score.
Ici, vous allez avoir notre tout premier produit. Donc, c'est des figurines. Oui, alors il y a beaucoup d'histoires comme ça.
There are many stories like this, where children pass by a stand and say, "Oh, Mom, look, there's a doll that looks like me. A doll with the same hair as me, the same eyes as me, or one that looks like so-and-so, like a cousin, etc." Well, it's important to know that our dolls represent a wide variety of, let's say, people and complexities. For example, in terms of color, we have dolls that are a bit lighter, a bit darker, and so on. We try to make everyone feel comfortable and ensure that all children are represented. We even have an albino doll, for example. So it's really about representing an entire community. Each child can see themselves through our toys.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy on Monday criticized Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico for a lack of desire to end his country's dependency on Russian natural resources. In social media posts on X, he described it as a big security issue for Europe and Slovakia. Zelenskiy made the comments after Fico met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow on Sunday. Fico confirmed Russia's willingness to continue to supply gas to Slovakia and said the meeting was in response to talks with Zelenskiy, who he accused of opposing any gas transit through Ukraine to his country. Ukraine has repeatedly said it would not extend a Europe transit deal, which expires on January 1st. Kyiv says payments for the gas have helped Russia to wage its almost 3-year war in Ukraine. Thousands turned out for an anti-government protest in Bratislava in response to the meeting. Some protesters were shocked by the surprise bilateral.
I don't like it at all that our Prime Minister should talk to a murderer of innocent people. I don't understand. It's terrible. Something completely different should be addressed here, like the collapsing education and healthcare system, and not shaking hands with someone who has committed such terrible crimes as Putin.
The flow through Ukraine accounts for around half of Russia's total pipeline gas exports to Europe. Slovakia, Italy, Austria and the Czech Republic will be the most affected if it ends. Slovakia, which has a long-term contract with Russia's Gazprom, has said buying gas elsewhere would cost it $229 million more in transit expenses. Zelenskiy added in his post online that Slovakia was paying Russia by its sovereignty, or via, quote, murky schemes. He gave no details. Slovakia's government office could not be immediately reached for comment.
Luigi Mangione has pleaded not guilty to New York State terror and murder charges. He's accused of fatally gunning down United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson on a Manhattan street. He was escorted into a New York courtroom Monday, where he faced 11 counts, including murder as an act of terrorism. If convicted, he faces a maximum sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. Mangione was transferred on Thursday from Pennsylvania to New York. He was arrested at a McDonald's restaurant in Altoona, Pennsylvania, 5 days after the December 4th killing of Thompson outside a hotel in Midtown Manhattan. In addition to state charges, Mangione also faces a 4-count federal criminal complaint charging him with stalking and killing Thompson. He has not yet been asked to enter a plea to those charges. The federal charges would make him eligible for the death penalty, should the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan decide to pursue it.
I have another grandkid who was very young when I told her that I would take her on this metro once it starts operations, but she's already in university now.
Sadiq would have been 26 years old. But 20 years ago, he and his mother, Sauda, were swept inland by a vicious tsunami which separated them. She lost Sadiq.
This is the mosque where I was separated from Sadiq. And the house next to the mosque I was rescued at.
Sauda, who like many Indonesians goes by one name, says she vividly remembers the sound of the rumbling earth when a 9.1 magnitude earthquake struck the Indian Ocean on Boxing Day in 2004. The tsunami killed 230,000 people across the coastlines of India, Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Indonesia, making it one of the deadliest disasters in recorded history.
When the quake happened, my children scattered out from the house, and I told them to run towards the mosque. I did not run. As I heard a rumbling noise, I lay down holding Sadiq tight. And I thought it was just the wind. I prayed to God and asked him what was happening. And then I came back to my house when suddenly I saw the wave approaching like a snake.
Dari tempat tu kemari ke jalan. Sampai ke jalan saya lihatlah air dari ujung sana dah jalan kayak ular.
She says she remembers holding on to Sadiq tightly while shouting at her 7 other children to run. In the aftermath, Sauda was reunited with only 6 of her children, as well as then 6-year-old Sadiq. Her 20-year-old Titan was never found. The family accepted the fact that she was one of the victims of the tsunami and was buried in a mass graveyard. But over the years, Sauda and her family have held on to the hope that Sadiq is still alive and would find his way back to them.
Saya kepingin kok masih saya hidup.
If he is still alive and I'm still alive, I want him to come home and for us to see each other before I die.
Jumpa sama saya sebelum saya mati. Tapi kalau dia udah nggak ada lagi,
But if he is gone, I wholeheartedly accept that that is God's will. But I still believe he is alive.
Cuma kita kan nggak tahu. Yang tahu semua kan Allah Ta'ala.
We don't know, only God knows. If he is alive, please tell him to come home and see me before I die. That is my wish if he is still alive.
Tapi kalau dia masih ada. Cuma kalau nggak ada, apa yang kita bilang?
An upcoming Taiwanese TV drama, 0 Day, promises to show Taiwanese audiences what a war with China might look like. It's an unprecedented production, confronting a topic that remains too sensitive for many Taiwanese filmmakers and with creators facing indirect censorship from China. The 10-episode series is set to be released next year, but an extended trailer released in July has already set off buzz in Taiwan, where residents have for many years considered a war with China unlikely. In recent years, though, China has stepped up war games, simulated attacks, and blockades of the island. Beijing maintains democratically governed Taiwan is Chinese territory, while the government in Taipei rejects that claim. The trailer for 0 Day focuses on several imagined scenarios should a war between China and Taiwan break out. It teased a global financial collapse, the activation of Chinese sleeper agents, and panicked residents trying to flee the island.
没有自由.
Without freedom, Taiwan is not Taiwan, says a fictional Taiwan president in a speech, urging unity after declaring war on China. The live feed gets cut off, replaced by a Chinese state television anchor who tells Taiwanese to surrender and to report hidden pro-independence activists to landing Chinese soldiers. Speaking to Reuters, showrunner Zheng Xinmei said Taiwanese should confront the fear of invasion rather than pretend it will never happen.
When we plan this drama, we hope to make people think, would they trade away their freedoms for power or for an enormous sum of money? When faced with the temptation, what will the Taiwanese people choose?
But for the series crew, confronting the idea in fiction has meant real challenges, from funding and casting to finding places to film. Zheng said more than half of the crew of 0 Day asked to be anonymous on the crew list. Some, including a director, pulled out of production at the last minute over worries it might jeopardize their future work in China or the safety of family members working there.
Those of us who worked on this production hope that this drama, which tackles such a taboo topic, becomes popular. That would open a door for other creators to not be too concerned about the China issue.
For many Taiwanese artists and entertainers, China is a much larger and lucrative market for film and television. But Beijing has regularly called out Taiwan artists who are seen as violating China's political ideology or have threatened to blacklist those unwilling to cooperate.
Also, we had seen, well, certain opinions from people saying things like it's closed. Rome isn't that great right now. The fountain is closed. But we arrived here, and it was a pleasant surprise that we coincided with the inauguration today.
We were lucky because we arrived today from Calabria without knowing about it, and we are very happy to have been able to witness this reopening.
According to my dream, I may live 110 years. Okay. How are your knees, Lennis? Just improving. Not much serious problem. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Today, all women in the Jazeera region, including Kurds, Arabs, and Syriacs, are uniting their voices, saying yes to supporting the Women's Protection Unit's YPJ, yes to preserving the rights and gains of the women's revolution in northern and eastern Syria. Today, we are safeguarding all the achievement of northern and eastern Syria by demanding freedom and rights for all women without discrimination.
Because we're being ripped off at the Panama Canal like we're being ripped off everywhere else.
President-elect Donald Trump said on Sunday that the U.S. could reassert control over the Panama Canal, accusing Panama of charging excessive rates to use the Central American Passage.
The principles, both moral and legal, of this magnanimous gesture of giving are not followed, then we will demand that the Panama Canal be returned to the United States of America in full, quickly, and without question.
Truth Social. Panamanian President Jose Raul Mulino reaffirmed the country's sovereignty over the canal in a recorded statement on X, adding that Panama's sovereignty and independence are non-negotiable. The U.S. largely built the canal and administered territory surrounding it for decades. Accords were signed in 1977 that paved the way for the canal's return to full Panamanian control. The U.S. handed over control in 1999. The waterway accounts for 2.5% of global seaborne trade and is critical to U.S. imports of autos and commercial goods by container ships from Asia, and for U.S. exports of commodities, including liquefied natural gas. Trump also warned that he would not let the canal fall into, quote, the wrong hands.
It was solely for Panama to manage and not for China or any other country to manage. You see what's going on there?
China does not control or administer the canal, but a subsidiary of Hong Kong-based CK Hutchison Holdings has long managed two ports located on the Caribbean and Pacific entrances to the waterway. It is not clear how Trump would seek to regain control over the canal. His comments underline an expected shift in U.S. diplomacy under Trump, who has not historically shied away from threatening allies and using bellicose rhetoric when dealing with counterparts. They are also an exceedingly rare example of a U.S. leader saying he could push a sovereign country to hand over territory.
بريح شو صار؟ بدي اريح اكثر ما ريح ريح هو هيك
صغار كلهم قاعد على الله أكبر وعليكم ورحمة الله السلام حسبي الله ونعم الوكيل Luego, luego.
We come to congratulate the whole Syrian people from east to west. We came and you listened, and now the page of hope of freedom will rise on all Syrian people and also, through it, to Lebanon.
Established.
More people placed flowers for the victims of a Christmas market attack in Germany on Sunday, as police said the suspect now faces multiple counts of murder, among other charges. The memorial in Magdeburg continued to grow 2 days after the car ramming attack killed several people and injured more than 200. Among those killed, a 9-year-old boy and 4 women, according to police. In a statement, police said the suspect is now held in pre-trial custody after prosecutors pressed charges of murder as well as attempted murder and grievous bodily harm. Police did not name the suspect, who is a 50-year-old Saudi man with a history of anti-Islam rhetoric. German media have identified him as Talib A. The suspect, who has lived in Germany for almost 20 years, was arrested at the scene following the 3-minute attack. Authorities on Saturday said his motive was not clear. However, the Magdeburg prosecutor said one possible factor could be what he called the suspect's frustration with Germany's treatment of Saudi refugees. Initially, the attack drew comparisons on social media to an Islamist-influenced immigrants' deadly attack on a Berlin Christmas market in 2016. Later, it emerged that the suspect had criticized Islam and expressed sympathy for the far right. Posts verified by Reuters on the suspect's X account suggest he supported anti-Islam and far-right parties, including the Alternative for Germany, or AfD, and criticized Germany for its handling of Saudi refugees. Saudi and German sources told Reuters that Saudi Arabia had warned German security authorities about the suspect. On Saturday evening, far-right protesters marched through Magdeburg calling for remigration. It's a term popular with far-right supporters seeking to force out people deemed not ethnically German. Police reported scuffles at the protest, a reflection of the political tensions in a country racked by arguments over immigration and over the surging popularity of the AfD.
Turkey's Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan met with Syria's de facto leader Ahmed al-Shara, also known as Abu Muhammad al-Golani, in Damascus on Sunday, Turkey's foreign ministry said. Shara is the leader of the Islamist group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, which led the operation to topple Bashar al-Assad 2 weeks ago. Footage shared by Turkey's foreign ministry showed the two men embrace and pose for photographs. On Friday, Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan said that Turkey would help Syria's new administration form a state structure and draft a new constitution, adding Fidan would head to Damascus to discuss this new structure without providing a date. Ankara had for years backed rebels looking to oust Assad and welcomed the end of his family's brutal 5-decade rule after a 13-year civil war. Turkey also hosts millions of Syrian migrants it hopes will start returning home after Assad's fall, and has vowed to help rebuild Syria. Fidan's visit comes amid fighting in northeast Syria between Turkey-backed Syrian fighters and the Kurdish YPG militia, which spearheads the U.S.-allied Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF, that Ankara regards as a terrorist organization. Speaking alongside Shara after the talks, Fidan said, quote, "There is no place for Kurdish militias in Syria." Turkey, alongside Syrian allies, has mounted several cross-border offensives against the Kurdish faction in northern Syria and controls swaths of territory along the border. Ankara has repeatedly demanded Washington halt support for the Kurdish fighters. The SDF has been on the back foot since Assad's fall, as it looks to preserve political gains made in the last 13 years, now that Syria's new rulers are friendly to Ankara. Shara said his administration would soon announce the new structure of the defense ministry and military, and would not allow for arms outside the control of the state. Seeking to allay worries about the future of Syria, Shara has hosted numerous foreign visitors in recent days and has vowed to prioritize rebuilding the country.
The 60-vote threshold having been achieved, the bill is passed.
After a chaotic few days in the House, it's good news that the bipartisan approach in the end prevailed. It's a good lesson for next year. Both sides have to work together. But by dealing with people who've had trouble with disasters, by helping our farmers avoiding harmful cuts, this is a good bill, and I'm glad we're passing it.
We will not have a government shutdown, and we will meet our obligations.
Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson said on Friday that Congress would vote to keep the federal government operating beyond a midnight deadline. The House of Representatives voted 366 to 34 to pass a bill to avert a government shutdown. It then moved to the Democratic-controlled Senate before it could be advanced to the desk of President Joe Biden. A bipartisan plan rejected by President-elect Donald Trump and his billionaire advisor Elon Musk would have kept the government funded at roughly its current annual rate and provided additional funding for disaster aid for storm-hit states and farmers. Trump demanded a rewrite to also lift the nation's debt ceiling. That bill was resoundingly rejected by the House, including 38 Republicans, on Thursday. Johnson said the new package would provide aid for disaster victims and farmers and ensure that federal workers will continue to be paid. He did not provide specific figures. If Congress does not pass a spending package, funding for everything from law enforcement to national parks will be disrupted, and millions of federal workers will go unpaid. A trade group representing airlines, hotels, and other travel companies said a shutdown could cost the U.S. travel industry $1 billion per week and, quote, threatens holiday travel disruptions that Americans won't tolerate.
I came here with so much anger. I truly believe martial law is justified and acceptable. No matter how much I think about it, it's all because of the fake news, the spread of false information, and the manipulation of public opinion that is pushing this country towards left-wing ideologies. And we can't sleep because of it. I'm so upset it brings me to tears, and I'm really heartbroken. That's why I came out today, to strongly condemn this.